Not too far away, the Marietta Tigers softball team faced off against Fort Frye. Bottom of the first, Samantha Mayo led things off with a single, right back where the ball came from. Now bases loaded and Claire Bills grounds one to short, and the throw to first isn't held onto, and a run comes across. And how about the aggressive base running? That'll score one more for the Lady Tigers as Emmy Ward is safe at the plate. Still no outs. Keely Hansen grounds one to second. Lady Cadets turn two, but another runner scores. Marietta puts up 4 runs in the first inning. Now runner on third. In the bottom of the third, Bills hits one deep to center. That allows Emmy Ward to tag up and score. Marietta pouring it on. They lead 5-0 now. Illy Casto going to get out of the inning with the strikeout. Swinging, let's go to the fourth. Now the pitcher up at the plate. It is Casto. She grounds one into left field, and she'll land on first with a single. Now 2 runners on coming up. Maddie Hinton lines one into center. That scores the first run of the day for the Lady Cadets. But the Lady Tigers hold on for the 5-2 win.